Hello, and welcome to the C3 Method Podcast with your host, Robert Polenick. Our goal is to educate you on everything health and fitness related with a clear, concise, and customized approach. We want you to know what you need to know and how to apply it in a way that fits you best. Today's podcast number 2273, the title is The Best Strength Accessories You're Not Doing. One of my clients is a personal trainer, and they were writing out some powerlifting programming for their clients. We were talking about selecting exercises outside of the main lifts of squat, bench, and deadlift. And one of the questions they presented was, what accessories should people be doing that you don't often see them doing? And I was like, ooh, that's a fun one. So we thought through what are common accessories and why, and then what are the uncommon accessories and why. So I thought it would be fun to share the uncommon ones, give a little bit of a reasoning for why we would include those, and then maybe you can include those into your programming and or better understanding why they're included into your programming, and it can help everything kind of progress faster for you. So the first one for squat, we're going to actually look at just squat, bench, and deadlift. For squat, one of the things that I think is extremely beneficial that you don't often people see doing for powerlifting are actually machine isolations, which would be machine adductor, abductor, leg extensions, leg curls, even like a hip thrust machine. Commonly, when people are wanting to get stronger for free weight movements, meaning a barbell, for example, that can move in any direction whatsoever, that's a free weight, whereas a guided weight would be a machine. So a free weight, they're thinking, okay, if I'm going to get better at squats, I want to do a variation of squats. And there's a ton of truth to that. But there are benefits to guided movements like machines, such as leg extension, leg curl, machine adductor, abductor, hip thrust, that kind of stuff. And the argument for that is there's a couple of things. Number one is when you look at big free weight movements, such as a barbell squat, our strongest muscles will try to control as much as they can before giving stress to our weakest muscles. So we think about all the muscles involved, maybe it's a group of 5 people. And of the 5, there are 3 that are really strong, there are 2 that are really weak. And they say, okay, the 5 of us are going to do all of this work. So there's a workload, maybe an 8-hour day, that people are supposed to do by the end of the day, and it's like, okay, we have to get all this work done. The 3 strong ones will take the majority of what they can, they're going to take what they can do. They're going to do as much as they possibly can do. And maybe between the 3 of them, they get 80% of the work done. And then there's 2 people left, and maybe one of them does 12% and the other one does like 8%. So that is how our body divides up the workload of moving a barbell. Is, okay, who is strongest? What's the most you can do? Who's next strongest? What can you do? Who's the weakest? We'll give you the littlest bit that we possibly can. The problem with that is the weak links stay the weak links. They're never really challenged to grow to match the other links. So in our example of, say, 5 workers, the 2 weaker ones are never challenged to grow to match the 3 stronger ones. This happens with barbell squats. If our quads and glutes are the stronger things, but maybe our adductors are really weak, well, you'll see that. You'll see that in the way the person moves. You'll see that in the limitations of what their top end strength is, their technique quality is. But their quads and glutes will always stay the strongest if they just squat. The adductors will get some stimulus, but they're going to get the minimal stimulus compared to quads and glutes. So how can you isolate the adductors to really maximize the stress to get them to maximize their strength potential? And that will be isolation movements such as the machine adductor. Maybe a person has weak glutes. They're very quad dominant and they don't allow themselves to hinge at the hip very much. So they use a ton of quads, they use a ton of adductors, but they have no butt. Well, then you would want to do machine hip thrusts to isolate the glutes. So machines often, they offer the opportunity to isolate the weak links away from the stronger muscles. You can then maximize the stimulus that those weak links receive. You can then maximize the rate at which they can actually catch up to the stronger muscles. So isolation machines related to squat muscles are a great way to eventually balance out the weak links to the strong links. Now, I wouldn't do those, like sometimes I'll do them in off season away from competitions. If somebody has, weak adductors, maybe we'll do some adductor machine warm up and a little bit of pre-exhaust and then go squat. So that way the adductors are the limiting factor of the squats and we know we push those to maximal intensity. But a more common version would be okay, after squats, let's go do, an isolation machine and then some free weight accessories. So for example, let's say the adductors are weak. After squats, we'll go do machine adductors and then maybe we'll do walking lunges. So you would do a free weight accessory after the isolation machine. And commonly the free weight accessory is also focused in on that weakness as well, but can use some other muscles to kind of help drive that weakness further and further and further into fatigue. So isolation machines would be a great accessory that people aren't using commonly when it comes to squats. Think about bench press. One of the things I see people miss all the time on bench press is high rep work. People want to just bench like singles, doubles, triples, and then they go do dumbbells and you'll see them do like maybe sets, like the highest would be sets of 10. And it's like, okay, well, you're using a lot of the strength-based fibers. You're using a lot of stabilization limitation. So you're not really driving the main movers, the chest and the tricep, as deep into muscular failure as possible because the stabilization and the systemic stress become more the limiters due to the heaviest of the weight load in the lower rep ranges. You're not really pushing that individual tissue fibers further and further and further and further and further into fatigue, which is going to create some good muscle growth, some good connective tissue strengthening, and just good nervous system, mind-muscle connection to these moving muscles. So high rep bench work is actually a really great way to build the bench press. Now, what I mean by high rep bench work can be 10 plus reps, maybe 10 to 20 reps. I've even done more. But if you sit down and do a max effort set of 20 on dumbbell press, give yourself a 3-minute rest, keep that same weight to good form failure, 3-minute rest, same weight to good form failure, 3-minute rest, same weight to good form failure, 3-minute rest, and then a 5th set to good form failure. You might get 20 the first time, maybe 18 to 19 the next time. It's going to drop to like 14, then 12, and then maybe another like 11. You're going to notice the strength drop off. The greater the strength drop off across those 5 sets, the more indication that high rep bench work would actually help you. If you can maintain a pretty small drop off, maybe you get 20, then 17, 16, 15. Well, that's a very small drop off. So you probably don't need high rep bench work as much because your strength endurance is pretty solid. But if you have a horrible strength endurance, meaning you keep the same weight, good form failure, and there's just a huge drop. You go from 20 on the first set to maybe only like 8 on the last set. That's a huge drop. So you would likely then benefit more from high rep bench work. Now, this isn't something I'm just making up. Louis Simmons from Westside Barbell used to have his athletes do high rep bench work all the time. And that's been stated by a lot of his former athletes like Dave Tate, Greg Panora, and many others like Bark Bell. So a lot of people who spent time at Westside Barbell, who would be like a case study for strength development, they did a lot of high rep bench work. And even though they lifted in gear, like bench shirts, it still helped their raw bench, and it definitely converted over to better bench in the gear. So if you compete raw, it's still going to be something that's helpful. So even though Westside Barbell did it and they competed in gear, doesn't mean what they did was only beneficial for geared athletes. It was beneficial for raw athletes as well. So high rep bench work can be extremely helpful. And there's a lot of ways to set that up, but in general, good form failure for sets of like 10 to 20. And every once in a while, you can go above that if you'd like. I remember I've done a couple tests where I was like, okay, how many reps can I possibly perform in 2 minutes? under what weight. So for what weight can I stay busy for 2 minutes? I think I did like 50-pound dumbbells, just 2 minutes of presses. And what's wild is your arms feel like they're going to fall off and die, and then all of a sudden you catch a little bit of endurance, and then you actually do die. But there's this period where the body gets super, super hot and stressed, and then it calms itself, even while you're still lifting, and then it kind of fatigues and falls off. If you can get past that initial spike in intensity and keep moving, keep moving, keep moving, you get a really neat kind of neurological adjustment to stress. And the body creates this extra window of strength and endurance and pain management that you never thought you had before. And that can actually help drive you in a multitude of other ways to continue to make progress. So there's benefits outside of just the physiological benefits of high rep bench work. The mental toughness to get through that is then mental toughness you can use in a bunch of other areas of your programming and life. Then we have deadlift. One of the kind of great accessory categories for deadlift is doing things off of a GHD or a 45-degree hyperextension. So if you think of a GHD, glute ham developer, we typically would think of doing glute raises, or sometimes people would do hamstring curls, like up out of a GHD. But if you just stick your body straight out, like GHD, and you're facing down to the ground, and then you do dumbbell rows, that is freaking wicked. Absolutely freaking wicked to do dumbbell rows in just a straight position in a GHD. Because your spinal erectors, your glutes, and your hamstrings have to fire to hold your positioning. Then the lats and the mid-back are firing to row the dumbbells. And your core is going to fire, your psoas is going to fire, your adductors are going to fire. I mean, every dang muscle in your hip, every dang muscle that's related to not allowing your body to fold and bend has to fire. Your obliques, transverse obliques, like everything, like transverse abdominis, like obliques, the internal, external, you name it. If there's a muscle in the middle of your body, it's involved. Now, what's really helpful about that is when you do a squat, you don't want the bar to fold your body over. When you do a deadlift, you don't want the bar to fold your body over. So doing a GHD where you just stick your body straight out, stiff like a board, and then you do movements like a one-arm dumbbell row or a two-arm dumbbell row, that is an awesome, awesome way to fire off a ton of musculature that is related to maintaining position and stabilization in squat and deadlift. So that is an awesome accessory. It's very humbling. You won't be able to dumbbell row a lot of weight, but it's a great stimulus. I'll also do GHD straight out positioning but face upwards. So almost like you're getting ready to do a sit-up. And then I'll do chest presses. And again, all those same muscles have to fire off to hold you, but it's a unique feeling compared to facing down. It kind of uses all the same muscles, but in a little bit of a weird and different percentage and different way. So sometimes what was contracting to prevent movement now has to, like in an extended phase, do an isometric contraction to hold movement. So it changes between like the isometric positional holds and the way in which the stimulus feels on the muscles. So a good way to feel this and make sense of what the hell I'm talking about is to get in a GHD and do a set of chest presses. Then flip around and do a set of rows. And you're going to feel how oddly different but insanely challenging those movements actually are. So those are really cool, very weird variations. You can do a ton of different stuff. We've done like pull-off rotations with bands in that position. Did like Superman presses, which is basically an overhead press, but actually it's horizontal because you're in a GHD. You can do a ton of different movements like lateral raises, reverse flies, a bunch of stuff. Those are super fun, very beneficial because it's just a ton of core challenge, and it fires off literally everything in the middle of your body that's related to holding postural position. So those are some fun accessory ideas that you can use for strength-based training that maybe you're not currently doing. So we said for squat, isolation machines. So do your normal warm-up, do your squat variation for the day, do an isolation related to your weaknesses, and then go do your other accessories. That's a great addition for strength training, for squat. For bench press, high rep work, and that would be you do your normal warm-up, you do your normal heavy bench load, and then your accessory can be a high rep bench variation. And then for deadlifts, the GHD movements can be, again, after the main deadlift variation, but before other accessories. You don't want to get do that at the very end of the workout, you'll be way too exhausted for it to be like a decent stimulus and decent performance. So warm up, major deadlift movement for the day, then your GHD rows and chest presses and or other variations of GHD stabilized work, and then your other accessories. So those can be super fun, great new ideas, maybe some stuff to spark some fun and creativity in your programming. If you have any questions about implementing that, let me know. You can go to our website, c3method.com. 3 is spelled out T-H-R-E-E, so C-T-H-R-E-E method.com. And you can ask me any questions there. You can also join our Patreon community, get free training, like not free because you have to pay to join it, but once you join it, it's free. So once you pay for it, it's free. You can get training programming, nutrition programming, get to ask me a ton of Q&A that shows up in weekly videos on Patreon, but also on YouTube. So it's a great resource for a little bit of a lower cost than our typical one-on-one based work. So if you want one-on-one coaching, go to the website. If you want some group coaching, but still really good quality stuff at a really low cost, then go to patreon.com/C3method. Great. If you need anything, just let me know. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people we share it with, the more people can help. If you like the information we share in the podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name C3 Method. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.